The Brandywine River, which winds a short but dramatically beautiful 60 miles through southeastern Pennsylvania into Delaware, has affected our lives to a far greater degree than its size suggests. Its quiet beauty has fostered an impressive artistic tradition known as the Brandywine Heritage. Ever since Howard Pyle established his famous studio in Wilmington late in the 19th century and taught such art world luminaries as Frank Schoonover and N.C. Wyeth, the stretch of countryside surrounding Chadds Ford has inspired numerous important artists, including Andrew Wyeth, Jamie Wyeth, and other members of the family and their contemporaries. In 1967, concerned citizens seeking to preserve this region's historic and artistic character, as well as the environment, established the Brandywine Conservancy, which 4 years later gave rise to the spectacular Brandywine River Museum. The museum, which has since drawn visitors from every state in the United States and 80 foreign countries at the rate of 200,000 visitors annually, houses many of the paintings of the area artists who have played such an important role in the development of American art. And the museum itself is a work of art, providing a comfortable setting for its many visitors. Even the parking lot symbolizes the Conservancy's concern with preserving the natural beauty of the environment. A band of color starts at the Route 1 entrance in Chadds Ford and continues to the museum entrance. Native plants and wildflowers abound, tended with loving care by volunteer gardeners who also have encouraged the nesting of bluebirds in the lot. Visitors enjoy these gardens as well as the walks along the many trails, which take them along the Brandywine River. Canoes can be launched here, and the outdoor activity in general, along with the magnificent collection of art inside, makes for a great day in the country for young or old. The museum building is a remarkable blending of old and new, indoors and outdoors. At first glance, it appears almost exactly as it did in 1864 when, as a grist mill, it converted local grain into flour. The windows are now shuttered, but the old brick walls are preserved as they were. The rear of the museum, with its elegant curved glass walls, provide the viewer inside with a dramatic view of the river and its hills. The interior of the museum combines simplicity with almost baronial splendor. From the white plaster walls of the galleries to the hand-hewn wooden beams, it provides an ideal setting for viewing the works of art. There is also an excellent bookstore at the museum with a fine collection of prints, field guides, and art books. The museum is increasingly recognized as an important national resource. The museum director for the past 7 years, Mr. James Duff, has seen the museum grow from a staff of 3 to 43 and has seen the budget rise from $50,000 to $1 million annually. Recently, I had a chance to tour the museum and to talk with Jim Duff about his role there and about the newest exhibition entitled N.C. Wyeth, Not for Publication, which continues through September 6th. We've had a delightful tour of the museum grounds, and now I'd like you to meet the museum director, Mr. James Duff. Jim, it's a pleasure.
Good afternoon. I'm glad you're here.
Jim, you organized this special exhibition, Not for Publication, to honor the 100th anniversary of N.C. Wyeth's birth. What prompted you to put together this special exhibition?
Well, we thought it was appropriate that a museum so dedicated to N.C. Wyeth ought to do something to celebrate the 100th anniversary of his birth. And he always wanted to be known as he would have said, as a painter, rather than as an illustrator, for which he is more generally known and for which for decades he's been famous.
And so the normal illustrations that he's famous for are not included in this particular show?
There are no illustrations in this exhibition, although interestingly enough, there is one painting, Mowing, which was originally prepared as an illustration but never published. It's fascinating because he wanted to be a landscape painter. This is a landscape painting. He thought there wasn't enough action in it to send it to the publisher. A wonderful farm scene, thought by many to be one of his most beautiful paintings. He thought of it as a failure, as an illustration in any case. We think of it as an important beginning to his career as a landscape painter.
Now, N.C. Wyeth, you mentioned in your exhibition catalog, would have been really proud of this display. Why do you say that?
I certainly hope he would have been. I think because he wanted to be remembered as a painter of landscapes principally, and also as a painter of still lifes, as an important portrait painter too. And those are the three subjects to which this exhibition is dedicated.
Now, N.C. Wyeth, like many painters, went through periods in his life. Would you comment upon them briefly?
Well, he certainly did. There was obviously an early period when he was a student. and interested in both landscape and even more in illustration at that time. First a student in Massachusetts with various teachers, and then a student of Howard Pyle in Wilmington, Delaware, and Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania. Howard Pyle was the foremost illustrator of his day and trained dozens and dozens, well over 100 important American illustrators. N.C. Wyeth was one of those.
And what are some of the pieces that would typify the various periods that N.C. Wyeth went through?
We have actually very little work left over from that student period, say before 1907. Before that time, he was still heavily under the influence of Howard Pyle as a fairly immediate mentor. There are, however, a few very small landscapes in which he's concerned with the effects of brilliant light on buildings. Just a couple of those in the exhibition. However, beginning about 1908, 1909, he began to do paintings in a very impressionistic style, developing his concern for light. There are a lot of wonderful examples of that in the exhibition. One of the earliest would be the painting Summer Days, showing two figures on the bank of a brook among flowers and bright green grass. He continued in a variety of impressionistic styles, influenced by painters like Childe Hassam, J.L. Muir, Americans, and the Italian painter Giovanni Segantini. He continued thus until at least the mid-1920s, and some wonderful paintings developed from that. Paintings like Buttonwood Farm, painting no one has ever seen in Chadds Ford before, Harvey's Run. Almost all of these paintings of the local landscape, that is the Brandywine River Valley, and indeed the rural community right around the Chadds Ford area.
Now, in addition to the art on display, there are various activities that viewers here might be able to participate in. Would you kindly comment upon them?
Well, certainly. The Brandywine River Museum has a wide variety of activities. There are changing exhibitions, so that our galleries are not static things, although visitors often have favorites in the permanent collection, and we try to keep the best of the permanent collection on display. But there are also changing exhibitions, at least 6 or 7 of these every year, and some of them of considerable importance to art historians. We think all of them aesthetically pleasing. There are very special Christmas exhibitions that draw, I admit, enormous crowds. A large percentage of our annual attendance is for that special Christmas show. We have an annual antiques show that our volunteers put together that's quite a beautiful event and provides funds for our Art Accessions Fund. We have a variety of openings, and we publish a number of publications each year, including a membership newsletter.
What are some of the other pieces in the not-for-publication exhibition that typify some of N.C. Wyeth's other styles?
Well, after what may reasonably, however loosely, be called his Impressionist period, he moved on to an interest in post-impressionism, modernism indeed, particularly influenced by a local collection of Russian modernism. He worked with that kind of a notion in many of his paintings in the mid-1930s. But interestingly, by the late 30s, he'd been taught the temper technique, that is the egg temper technique, by his former student, and then his son-in-law, Peter Hurd, who returned to Chadds Ford from his studio in New Mexico to bring his knowledge of that medium to his former teacher, and to his brother-in-law, Andrew Wyeth, as a matter of fact. And father, N.C. Wyeth, and son, Andrew Wyeth, worked side by side for years after that in their studios in Chadds Ford, developing and perfecting their own approach to the egg temper technique. At that time, the landscape work was a major consideration once again. The palette began to darken, and some wonderful brooding pictures came out of the Chadds Ford experience, and it's important to say, out of Wyeth's experience on the coast of Maine. That period continued right up until his death in 1945. During the 1920s and 30s, he was also very active in still life painting and in portraiture. His portraits were largely a record of his family. They certainly weren't intended for circulation or for exhibition. But the still life painting was something else, and occasionally he did exhibit a major still life. The still lifes are unusual because they're extremely large paintings, and in them he played with the effects of light on constantly rearranged bottles and cups and plates and pipes and flowers, on fabrics, always the same, or often the same materials being moved around on a tabletop and repainted. Fascinating results. And one interesting characteristic of the whole business is that he tended to make objects oversized in his paintings, so that you see enormous eggplants and great huge red peppers in these things. They're all very exciting. Not what a lot of people think of as still life, and often reflecting the enormous gusto of this giant of a man, N.C. Wyeth.
Well, Jim, I'm looking forward to seeing not only the special display, but also some of the pieces in the permanent galleries. Is there someone who might take me around now through the permanent galleries to see some of the special works?
Well, I think an excellent guide would be one of our curators, Joan Gorman.
Joan, is this Joan over here?
That's Joan.
Hello, Joan.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Joan, would you kindly accompany me through some of the permanent galleries to take a look at some of N.C. Wyeth's works and the other pieces you have here?
I would be pleased.
Jim, we're going to leave you now.
Take care.
See you now. Bye-bye. Joan? Joan, this is the work of George Cope that you were telling me about?
Yes, a Westchester artist, and one of the many artists that we display in the museum, and not all of them are illustrators or members of the Wyeth family. Cope did a series of paintings that are very realistic, like this one. It was called Trompe l'oeil, or Fool the Eye, a very popular style from the 1880s to about 1900. And as you can see, he's very, very carefully depicted the works on 3 pine boards, and even the pine boards are painted on canvas.
Very realistic. What are you going to show us next?
We'll be looking at a Howard Pyle painting from about the same period, but an illustration.
Where is that?
Right across the gallery.
Okay, I'll follow you.
Good.
Joan, now what are we about to see?
This is an illustration by Howard Pyle. It was done around 1892, and as you can see, it's in black and white, simply because color reproduction in magazines at that time was not possible. It's a historical work. It depicts revolutionary soldiers drilling every day. The name of the painting, they used to drill every day. And Howard Pyle was very influenced by history and was very interested in accuracy in costumes, as you can see here, very carefully depicted, each and every fellow in line, and architecture. And this type of thing he passed on to his students, such as N.C. Wyeth, whose work we'll see next.
Might we see an illustration by him now?
Yes, that's up on the second floor, so if you'd follow me, please.
Certainly. Okay. Now, these are illustrations that he did for Outing magazine, is that correct?
Yes, N.C. Wyeth's Solitude series, The Indians. They were done in 1906, and as you can see, he is very much involved not only with the figures, but the landscape and atmosphere as well in both works. They appeared in the magazine, and later on, the magazine made them as reproductions, which could be brought as a series, and sold thousands and thousands of editions.
And these are in color, and the other illustration that you showed us was not.
Right. This is quite early, 1906. The work downstairs that we saw was 1892 or 3. Although N.C. Wyeth painted these with a great deal of color, they appeared in black and white and one color added, which was possible and which was financially feasible at that period.
Very nice. What might we see next?
I think we'll look at some Andrew Wyeth's.
Now, Joan, this is one of Andrew Wyeth's favorite subjects. Is that not correct?
Yes, it's Siri Erickson, who has been painting since the mid-1960s and continues to paint. She's a neighbor of the Wyeths in Maine. And here she is depicted in 1970, and a most striking portrait, I think. The composition is especially beautiful. Note, first of all, that he places the figure's top of her head at almost the center of the composition, and then fills the background with white, which is most striking, placing all the detail and color at the bottom of the composition, and yet he's able to pull off such a difficult maneuver artistically. The background is filled with dozens of colors, even though it appears to be white painted woodwork, and draws the eye around the canvas, or the composition rather, by means of breaking up the background with the woodwork itself. Really a striking and beautiful piece, and one of my favorites in the permanent collection.
Well, Joan, thank you for the tour of the Brandywine River Museum. There's many other pieces that I'd like to see, and I hope our viewers come and see the many pieces of art that are here at the Brandywine River Museum. This is Bob Weiner for Focus Delaware, on location at the Brandywine River Museum.